Well, it is never long into a conversation about infrastructure that you start talking about Auckland. And for anyone who had to battle to get here on time today, or who faces that battle on a daily basis because they happen to live here, it is an all-consuming topic for very good reasons. The region has been growing, or rather exploding, of late. So how do you provide for that growth? Please welcome the Deputy Mayor of Auckland, Bill Cashmore.
Ine mana, ine reo, ine rangatirama, ine ahawha, tēnei koutou, tēnei koutou, tēnei koutou kata. Kia ora and good morning. And although some of you sitting out there are still in the dark, it is a beautiful day outside. So welcome. Who had some of that green spirulina juice when you arrived this morning? Because I did. I'd recommend it. Because after I drank my glass of that wonderful concoction, I visualised myself coming into Auckland on my 4-prop drone this morning, a 15-minute flight directly from Ouri Point, and those of you who know where Ouri Point is, it's as far south as Auckland and east as you can get. But then sort of the green juice wore off and I actually realised it was a 50-minute car trip. Because I don't have any PT at all and probably never will. And like some of you, the transport that I face has a big impact on my life and my family's life, and all Aucklanders get to suffer from some of those problems that we have from fast growth, lack of investment, and lack of joined-up thinking over a very long time. Minister Twyford and Minister Stewart, thank you for your great words. It is so important that we all have a joined-up relationship for New Zealand Inc., for the UK and New Zealand Inc., for us all going forward, because we are one planet and it is getting shorter, it is getting smaller, and it is getting more densely populated. So the pressures are very real. Auckland City was amalgamated in 2010. I am not a career politician. I have no ambition to be one. But in 2010, I was a very nervous little fellow out in the Oreiri Hills thinking, what is this big city going to do to me, to my community, and to my city? The answer is actually pretty good. And this morning I want to talk you through briefly the history, through a series of pictorials, some of the challenges we're facing, and perhaps a challenge or two for you to think about as well. So the financial overview is all pretty good news. We've got a $26 billion capital investment focused around transport and water infrastructure planned for the next 10 years. That was passed unanimously by Auckland Council just a month or two back. Rates increases have been kept to a minimum, and funding through new targeted mechanisms for water quality and for the environment has been really accepted by the Auckland public. We do have a major challenge, though, in funding and debt. We pay for infrastructure developments, whether it's roading, whether it's footpaths, whether it's community centres or pools, intergenerationally on the lifetime of that asset's value. And that's fair and correct and the right way to do it. But it means our borrowing constraints are quite conservative. My private world businesses run a lot higher debt ratios than this. But councils' debts right throughout New Zealand are set, and Auckland, we are within 10% now of our headroom. So we have to find new and smarter methods of funding the infrastructure, and there are plenty of options out there. We just need to have the intestinal fortitude, as the Minister said, to grab hold of some of those things and to give it a go. Addressing the growth has to happen. The transport has got $12 billion worth of capital, and we are reducing environmental degradation. The Auckland Plan sets out the high-arching goals and aspirations that we have as a city. And that's been joined up with the government's aspirations as well. The unitary plans set how we are going to grow, where, how high, how wide, how much internal, and how much greenfields. And the 10-year budget is exactly that. It sets the finances and the parameters for 10 years. The Auckland Transport Alignment Project set a 30-year plan for transport, fully funded, as the Minister said, at $28 billion for the first 10 years. The Regional Land Transport Plan will be announcing a fully funded set of projects in the very near future. And the rail, the Minister has signalled they are going to have a comprehensive redevelopment and refinancing of rail, and it is about time. Population growth has been a challenge for us. And this graph, I think, is very important because you see how in 2014, we really took off. And that has big impacts for all of us. We are going to reach our population targets a lot quicker, 2 million people by 2028 rather than 2033. So everything that we have planned to do has to be done faster, it has to be done quicker, and it has to be more of it. We have to really strongly monitor our expenditures. And the next couple of slides really emphasise that. So our bulk of our money has been spent on transport, which is the blue, the water, which is the red, the parks and community, which is the green. The other challenge, of course, is keeping the operating expenditure tight. Now, we read lots of criticism, councils wasting money here or there. Well, in fact, we've grown by more than the size of Hamilton, by 260,000 people since 2010. Yet our operating expenditure, which is the blue line, the blue bars, has remained relatively static. The red is interest paid on capital projects, and the green is depreciation. Depreciation is an interesting story because some of the legacy councils didn't fund depreciation at all. We started off at 63%. By 2025, we will reach 100% funding of depreciation, and that has a big impact on CapEx and OpEx expenditures. The next 10 years, 2018 to 28, we are doing our hardest to constrain the operational expenditures, but you're seeing that the red line of interest really starts to creep up because as the capital projects get delivered, interest rates get more and higher, and the green depreciation flattens off because we have actually fully funded it by 2025. The capital investment. The blue is core direct expenditure. Again, the red is interest and the green is the depreciation factor. The capital investment is rising but arguably not quick enough. Council's borrowing. The red line at the top is 270% of revenue. That's set by Standard & Poor's, and the green line is our eternal limit that we set at 265%. So our debt peaks at the same time that CRL starts to land the big numbers. 2023, 2024, 2025, the depreciation is fully funded, so there's not more money going through operating expenditures for that, and the debt levels start to fall away. The only collateral damage potentially to this graph is that if our population rises higher than what we are predicting, so if we go over the 45,000 year on year, and last year was 55,000, that drop in debt will be slower because we have to do more capital expenditure. So there are some of the key numbers. Transport is 33% of the budget. Water is 8%, parks and community 30%. Centres 5%, economic and cultural development 7%, environmental management and reputation 11%, governance and other bits and pieces 6%. We have a comprehensive plan to deliver transport initiatives, worked with the government. The challenge we have is how can we do more quicker? How can we land Penlink? How can we do the light rail on 20B from the airport out to Manukau to prove to Auckland it's a great project, it really works? How can we do Amity faster? How can we turn Mill Road, which is going to be a crucial piece of infrastructure to provide the aggregates to build Auckland? 10 million tonnes a year goes on Mill Road. How are we going to do this faster? The challenge has to be around the procurement. There was a brief mention of Crown infrastructure partnerships. There's a brief mention of government agencies. We have the 30-year plan. We have the 10-year funding instruments. What we don't have is the 10 years of procurement instruments. I would suggest, with all humility, that we need to investigate how we have longer-term contracts to give companies in the infrastructure game, in the service provision game, a greater degree of certainty to deliver at a lower cost per square metre. If every table in this room is a bespoke project and it's not connected to the next table with a guaranteed work stream, that table is an island financially. And the person who is building that table has to contain their finances within that table. But if we have 10 of these tables joined together over a longer period of time, you have a greater financial ability to do more with certainty. And this is a challenge that we collectively need to engage. We need to partner up, and as Minister Stewart says, we need to look for experts and overseas wisdom and past experience, because boy, we can all learn from that. And most of all, we need to have the intestinal fortitude to have that go, to be brave enough to try it. Minister Stewart talked about water investment. It is a problem New Zealand is facing on a huge scale. Auckland has largely solved its problems. We have an asset management program through Watercare, and it's delivering safe, clean water. Our wastewater systems are world class, and we're probably the only region in the country that has that. The land transport, the water, are intricately tied to infrastructure delivery. And we have to make sure that those tables doing that, those 10 tables or 15 tables, are all interconnected. That sort of investment from Watercare is critical. The sort of investment from Auckland Transport and NZTA and KiwiRail is critical. There's a list of Watercare's projects. You don't need to know them all, but that is comprehensive and it is planned out for 30 years of certainty. Something that's brand new. Consenting has reached an all-time high in this country, in this city in particular, for housing. Just under 12,000 in the past year, or 11 months actually. That's up 25% year on year. And CCC's at 8,800, also a record high, up 28%. So what we know is that we are ramping up the build. Imagine how much more we could do if we could consent a factory to produce consented modules of a house, kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms, or even whole houses, and not consent each individual house or dwelling. Imagine the productivity gains that we could leverage off that. And my last slide talks about the greenfields versus brownfields. And this is where my good friend Stephen and I sort of beg to differ a little bit. So the unitary plan says that 70% of Auckland's growth is going to be inside the metropolitan urban limit, the rub. the rural-urban boundary. Call it what you like. It's going to be where there are urban residences now. We're saying 70% of the build needs to be there, 30 to 40% outside. There's a margin of error in it, of course. The unitary plan had a theoretical capacity of 423,000 dwellings and an infrastructure provision ones of somewhere between 225 and 275,000. So there is capacity within that urban boundary to provide a lot more houses, apartments, and terraced condominium type structures. What we are seeing now is that Auckland's are grabbing that. We are seeing huge growth in brownfield developments, over 68% compared to greenfields, and a huge percentage of those, in the 80s, are near major transport nodes. People are wanting to be close to public transport. I wish I was. And if that challenge is there, then how do we handle the reverse sensitivity? How do we handle the NIMBYism? And that has to be through quality. They've got to be great urban places where people want to live and play, where people can bring up their kids. It's near a school, and that's again where the Minister of Health, the Minister of Education, and the good Minister of Transport and Housing all must align to deliver the same facilities, the same services as we try to do with parks and community centres and so forth. Auckland is on a journey, and we're never going to be perfect. You know, all of us have a pothole at the bottom of our driveway, either real or metaphorical, or it's just in our mind. But the journey we're on is positive. I've tried to show to you that the books and the balance sheets are in good order. There is a plan. There is a lot more coordination between Auckland and Wellington. We need now to coordinate more with the private sector, using smarter financial instruments, Crown Infrastructure Partners, not be scared to embrace things like One Belt, One Road and take the opportunities that may provide us. Let's try and do more, quicker. Let's try and do more with the same funding, not less, but let's try and always do it really well. Because this is my city, this is your city, and this is our country. We're 38% of the GDP. We're receiving a huge amount of the population growth, a huge amount of the employment growth, and the young people love to be here because of the opportunity. Tēnei koutou katoa. Have a great 2 days. Thank you.